Welcome back. So far, we have a bird that flaps, pipes that spawn and move, and we log game over if we hit something. Today we will finish the core loop. We will keep score when the bird passes through the pipes, we will show the score on the screen, and we will display a game over panel with a restart button when the bird hits something. Alright, let's start. So the first thing I want to do is to improve a bit how the pipes look, because I think in the last video we stretched them a bit too much. So yeah, let's click on prefabs pipe. Yeah, it doesn't look too good now. Let maybe reduce a bit the size. Maybe this one a bit bigger. Okay. Yeah, let's see how it plays now. Yeah, now they look better. Yes, perfect. Yeah, fantastic. Another thing I want to do is to change the movement of the bird to a value that makes it easier to control. I think 10 is too much. Let's maybe change it to 5 and see how it plays now. Because I think right now it's very difficult to go through the pipes. We don't want that. Okay, yeah, now it's better. Perfect. Yeah, definitely better. Yes. Okay. Great. Perfect. All right. Next thing we are going to do is to create our very own game manager. Right click in the hierarchy and select create empty. Let's name it game manager. Perfect. Make sure to reset the position. Yes. Okay. Now we go to scripts and create a new script. Game manager. And we do the same thing we have done until now. We click game manager and we drag and drop. Perfect. Now if we double click here, we should see the script. All right. So now we have the game manager script open. So the first thing we are going to do is to make this game manager a singleton. What's a singleton, you might ask? Singleton is basically a design pattern to make this, let's say, game object unique across all, in this case, across all the scenes. Why we want to do that? Because we will see how the game manager is going to control the score, is going to control many other factors of our application. So we don't want it to, for example, R-score twice, right? We don't want any duplication in this kind of key control of our game, right? So this is why it's usually a good practice to make the game manager a singleton. So how we can do that? Very simple. So we can say public static game manager instance. Okay. Now what we can do is to make it a field. You can say get private set. Perfect. All right. Next, what we want to do. Okay, we want to control. We want to set a score in the screen, right? That's what we want to do. So for that, we need to use something called TextMeshPro. It's the way that Unity has to display text in the screen, right? For that, we have to import using TMPro, okay? And now we can do the same thing we did until now. Serialize field. Yeah, private text mesh pro UI score text. Perfect. All right, the start method, we're not going to need it, but we're going to need the awake method because we want to basically initialize things before the start method happens. So now we're going to establish the singleton pattern. Okay, so we say, oh, by the way, this should be capitalized instance. Yes. So now we can say if instance is different null and instance is different from this one, right? Because what we will do is destroy the game object and return. Okay. So what we are saying here is like, okay, if there is another game object in the scene that is not basically the main one, okay, if it's not this one and it's different from null, destroy it. Okay. And now we can say, okay, we know for sure there is only one game object, so we assign the instance to this. Okay. And let's make the game object work across different scenes because we might have multiple levels, right? Level 1, level 2, level 3. And for that, we need to use don't destroy and load game object. So on every load of each scene, we basically keep the game manager. And yeah, other thing we should do is probably initialize the score. So we can say if score text different of null, we say score text equal 0. Perfect. All right. We also don't want to use the update function. What we need is a public, because this function will be called public void add score. Yes. And we say int amount. Okay. And now we add basically, oh, by the way, we forgot another variable here, which is going to be our score, private int score equals 0. Yes. This will keep track of our score. And we say, okay, every time we call the add score, we're going to increase our score, right? So we can say plus equal amount. So this will basically say, okay, if our score is 0 and we receive amount 10, the score will be 10. If our score is 10 and we receive amount 5, then the new score will be 15, right? Because it's summing up. And now what we have to do is we say, okay, if a score is different of null, we display it. Perfect. So now we basically, we add the score, the new amount, sorry, and then basically we display it in our score text that doesn't exist yet. We are going to create it right now, no worries. So we go now back to Unity, okay? And now we are going to create our text. To create our text, we're going to right-click in the hierarchy, select UI, and TextMeshPro. Perfect. You will see the following pop-up. Click Import TMP Essentials. All right, that's it. You don't have to import the examples and extra. That's all fine. You can close this now. Let's rename this to score text. Great. Let's zoom out. Okay, now, you see here how the new text is here? Perfect. So now you just need to drag and drop. Let's maybe zoom out a bit and move it to the top left. Yes, something like that. Perfect. And now let's say, actually, let's maybe say score 0. Yes, perfect like that. We are going to have to do a small change. 1 second. So in the add score, we don't want to just show the score itself. We want to show also the word score. Okay, something like that. Perfect. Let's maybe add a space here. Yes. All right. And similarly here, we say score like that. Fantastic. Okay, so this is it. Now what we have to do is just click the game manager and now drag and drop the score text to the score text section. Yes, something like that. Great. So now you have plugged in the score text into the game manager. All right, let's see if the game is still working. Yes, still works. Great. One thing I'm going to show you is how the singleton pattern is going to destroy additional game managers. We are going to copy and paste multiple times, like you can see here, many different game managers, and we're going to play, and you will see how only one game manager is going to remain in the scene. Yes. You see here, game manager 16, it's the one remaining. Okay, fantastic. All right, now you can delete all of those. We can say, all right, delete. Perfect. Okay, so what do we do now? So we basically have the score text, okay, and we have the game manager that adds our score, but now we need a way to detect that basically we should have one more score, right? We need a way to tell Unity, okay, now I'm getting points, right? Now I'm getting higher score. How do we do that? The answer is by using triggers. So if you remember in the first video, we talked about colliders. So triggers are basically colliders with one option check. Let's show that. So we click prefabs, enter the pipe. Okay, let's select the top pipe. Basically, let's scroll down. No, let's see here. Box collider 2D. There is an option called isTrigger. This will convert it into a trigger. And what's the difference between a trigger and a normal collider? Well, the trigger doesn't block. When there is a collision, it doesn't block the object physically. So you can go through the object if it's a trigger. This is very useful because it's the case that we are trying to solve right now. We want to trigger some logic when we go through something, right? In this case, another collider. So let's show that. So inside the pipe prefab, let's create a new empty object and let's call it score zone. Yes. Let's now make sure the score zone is like that. Yes. Let's add now a box collider to the score zone. Perfect. You can see here very clearly this green square. However, I want to make it bigger because still the bird could go above and below, right? Without touching the score zone. And we don't want that. So let's make it bigger. Oh, like that. Perfect. Now we cover the whole area. One thing we must not forget is to basically set is trigger here, right? Because what happens if we don't set is trigger? Then what will happen is the bird will crash. So maybe I can show you. Let's click play. And now the bird, when it tries to go through, it won't be able to. Yes, you see here, game over, because it's crashing against the score zone. Okay, so now if we click is trigger, let's see what happens. Yes, it's going through. Fantastic. This is what we want. Now we need to create some logic to do something useful when the bird triggers the collider. All right. So to do that, we exit the prefab. We go to assets, script, and let's create a new script. Call, how do you call the score? Trigger. Yes. Great. So let's wait until this loads. Okay, so now we have to do is to open the prefab. Okay, select the score zone. And now assign the score trigger to the score zone. Like this. Perfect. That's it. Let's now click in score trigger. Yes. So what do we have to do here? We can use a built-in function that Unity provides, which is called onTriggerEnter. So let's do that. Private void, yes, onTriggerEnter 2D. It's important, has to be 2D. And then collider other, yes. Yeah, actually something like that. Something like that we want. There is a few things, however, that we want to add. Like, because we only want to trigger the collider once, right? We don't want to get 2 coins if we go through just one collider. This is not fair, right? So let's create a boolean. Is trigger false? Yes. Okay. Great. So let's remove this for now, although we will use it. Let's say, okay, if is trigger, if has already been triggered, we return because we don't want to get 2 coins, right? When we go through just one pipe. This is not fair. So we say return. Okay. Now, if is trigger, it's already false. Then first thing we need to do is to say, okay, it's triggered true. Okay, so now it's been triggered and we add the score. We call the GameManager instance and we call the function add score. And how are we able to call the function add score from the GameManager? Well, 2 main things. If we go back to the GameManager, we originally made the GameManager instance static, meaning that basically you don't have to initialize the GameManager class. You don't have to initialize it. You can just simply access it. And another thing we did is we made the add score public, as you can see here, so it can be accessed from other files. Okay, so we go back to the score trigger. We are now adding the score. Okay. That's pretty much it. If we want to be super safe that only a bird is actually going through the pipes, which in our game, this is going to be the case all the time, but just to show something new, how we can detect that it's only the bird, the one that's going through that. So we can say if other, get component bird is different from null, then we add this logic. So imagine if we don't have only birds. Imagine we have, let's say, I don't know, flying donkeys, for example. In this case, the donkey won't be able to go through the pipe because we are basically saying, okay, only the elements, the game objects that which the bird component is different from null, meaning that exist, will be able to trigger the score. Okay? So this is what we are doing in this condition. And that's pretty much it. We are going to try it. Let's click play and see what happens. Okay, score is 0. Let's see what happens now. Okay, score 1, score 2, score 3. All right. Yes, it's working. And it's only counting one by one. So it doesn't matter if the bird is still going through the trigger. It's only score just 1, which is exactly what we want. Good job. All right, let's start working now on the game over screen. To do that, let's click on Canvas, right click, UI, panel. Yes, let's call the panel game over panel. Yes, let's maybe make it black. Yeah, let's maybe do in black. Why not? Sounds good. Okay, so let's create now UI TextMeshPro inside the panel, of course. Let's rename it to game over text, and let's change the text to game over. Okay, good. One trick to make sure it's in the middle is just you can stretch the yellow rectangle to the borders and now click this button in alignment, the center. Perfect. Now you can click on the move tool and put it a bit, yeah, to the top. And let's maybe make it bigger. Let's make it, I don't know, 50. Yes. Because auto size will be too, no, I think 50 is fine. Let's maybe make it bold, right? We can change, of course, as well the font if you prefer. I would leave it for now. I think it's fine. Okay, we will need another text, which is, by the way, you need to click inside in the panel again, UI, and this is going to be our game over score text. By default, let's say this is going to be a score 0. But it's not aligned. Let's do the same trick as we mentioned earlier. Okay, good. Maybe I want to change. What happens if we say something more yellow? Yeah, something like that's good. All right, perfect. What we will need as well is a button, right? So we click UI, we click button, text mesh pro. Okay, so we say this is going to be restart button. Perfect. Let's maybe move it to the bottom like this, and let's change the text. Let's say, let's rename this inside restart button text, and let's change the text to restart. Perfect. All right, this is our panel. For the time being, we are going to set it inactive. You can click here to set it active and inactive all the times you want. For the time being, we are going to set it inactive because otherwise we won't be able to see our game. Let's go back now to the GameManager script. All right, we have to do a few changes here. Mainly, we need to reference the game over panel that we just created. So we click. Actually, let me show you another new thing. Let's maybe create a header called UI, and you will see this will create a section in the inspector, which is very, very useful. All right, let's create a serialized field, private, game object, game over panel. Yes, exactly what we want. And also what we want to have is a serialized field, private, TextMeshPro, game over text, not exactly game over score text. Okay, cool. All right, now what we will need is a new function. We will need the, for example, restart function. Let's start with that. We say public because it has to be accessed, right, from the panel. Public void restart. And then we say here, it's scene as scene manager, get active scene. Okay. So we get in the scene that it's right now. By the way, to make it work, we have to import a scene manager. By the way, don't forget that you need to import using Unity Engine.scene management. Okay. Now you can do scene manager load scene, and then we type here build index. Perfect, perfect. Okay, now we go back to the inspector. Now if we go to the panel, we enable it again and we go to the restart button, there is this on click section. Okay, what we want to do is to click the plus. And now what we want to do is to drag and drop the game manager into this field. Okay, and now select the restart function here. Perfect. All right. Yeah, let's test it out if it works. Okay, what happens if I click restart? Oops, nothing happens. Let's see what's going on. All right, so there is a few things that we didn't do. All right, so if we click on the game manager in the UI section, by the way, this is what the header does. It creates a nice section, which is very good. If you have a lot of variables here, it's very nice to have them in different sections. But one thing that we didn't do is we didn't assign the game over panel here and the game over score. Okay, so let's do that right now. We set here the game over panel, and this is the game over score text. Okay, which is exactly this one. Perfect, we saved that. Other things we didn't do. The game over panel by default is going to be disabled, okay? But we need a way. I mean, we still don't have the game over function, so we are going to fake that. But what we need to do is to say game over panel when we start, when the awake function of the game manager starts, we want to set always the game over panel to false. Actually, let's maybe not do that because then we won't be able to test it for now. But what we want to do for sure here is say game over sec active false, because when we restart the game, we want to disable the game manager, the game overs panel, because otherwise we won't be able to see if our restart function did something, right? So let's click again this and let's see what happens. We click restart. Oops, something happened, but I think the problem is that basically I think the bird went to the floor. No, it was immediate. Let's check what's going on. Okay, so I found out what's going on. So basically the problem is that we are trying to test the gain over panel in a very unnatural way, right? Not being part of the cycle of the game, meaning that by default, we are making it active, right? So what's happened when we basically go to the restart function and we go to the scene manager, get active scene, load scene, the scene loads with exactly the game panel, game over panel active. So doesn't matter if you click restart, it will always show again the game over panel over and over. So my suggestion is the following. Let's maybe for now postpone a bit the game over panel, and let's make it right now integrated in the cycle of the game. So it's this way everything will work. So what's the next thing we have to implement? We need to implement the gain over function. Yes, the function that shows this gain over panel after the bird touches either the ground or a pipe. To do that, let's go to basically, let me change these changes. Yes, this is how it was before. Okay, cool. By the way, I added this time scale one because if you remember on the bird, we are basically setting the time scale to 0. So we need a way to activate the game, which by the way, it's always a good practice to do it earlier. So here it's better. Okay, cool. Let's create this new function. Let's create public void gain over. Yes, perfect. So what we want to do here is what we are actually doing in here. So we can remove this, we can remove that, and we can actually have it here instead. So we can say when the gain is over, we want to show the gain over panel. Yes, this is very important, right? We want to freeze the gain and show the gain over panel. Okay? So now what we can do here is to say GameManager instance gains over. So as you remember with the other scripts, for example, the score trigger, we can actually call the GameManager from inside. Instance at score, okay? So now we can say GameManager instance gain over. The only thing is that the gain over function needs to be public. Is it public? Yes, it's public. So yeah, let's see how it is right now. Okay, awake at score. All right, okay, let's see if this works. Let's set the gain over panel to false. And one other thing I want you to do, click the game manager and drag and drop the following. The gain over panel, drag it over the gain over panel UI here, and the gain over score text, drag it over here. Yes, that should do it. Let's see what's happening now. Yes, we see it. Perfect. What happens if we click restart? It works. Great. Congrats. All right. So one thing we didn't test out is if our score will appear as well in the gain over panel. Let's see that. Okay. 1. Oops, not there. Let's see what's going on. Let's go back to the script. We are actually not calling the game over score text. So let's do that. So let's here, before setting it active, let's say game over score text score for a string. Yes, that should be it. Let's play. Okay. One, 2, 3. Yes, it works. Fantastic. And now if we click restart, yes, the game starts again and we can keep playing. Oops, but we found a bug. You see, now the score is still at 0. Let's find out what's going on. Alright, so I found out what's going on. The problem is this line, don't destroy unload. Basically, the problem that we had is that the game manager was not being destroyed after the different restarts of the scene. So of course, the previous, let me show you, the previous game objects that were linked through the inspector were being destroyed, right? While the game manager was still being in the scene, even in the newest scene. So all of that was missing. Maybe I can show you. If I click play, and it works perfectly for the first scene, okay? But if we click game over, and now we click restart, see what happens with all of these game objects. Missing, you see? Missing, because why that happens? Because the game manager, it's set to don't destroy or load, so the game manager is the same as before we restarted the scene, but of course the rest was destroyed. Okay, so what we have to do is simply remove this line. Okay, and now everything works. Let's test it out. Okay. 1, okay. 2, okay. Now if we gain over, restart. See, if now the score keeps working. Yes, works like a charm. Perfect. So now you can restart as many times as you want and it will keep working. Perfect, fantastic. All right, that's all for this video. We created our very own game manager. We created the first canvas with the game over panel. We found out how to implement a singleton, which is going to be very useful in your game development career. Yeah, I would say that's plenty for this video. So yeah, thanks for watching and see you in the next one.